Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, this is just the most recent of a few different transportation electrification programs that the City of Ashland is engaged in. And basically, this is a revision of a previous set of ideas that we came up with as for how Ashland can electrify transportation. We ran an electric vehicle incentive several years ago and got some feedback from that. It was pretty popular. And based on some of the feedback we got, we went out and applied for a grant to create more of these programs. So basically, the intention of this round of programs is really to increase equitable access to EVs, which include cars and bikes. And we're trying to mostly make it more available to people who are purchasing more economical cars. We're trying hard to not subsidize the purchase of luxury vehicles. And the grant money that we were able to get from this comes from Bonneville Environmental Foundation. They have a set of funds available for zero emission vehicles, and they're specifically interested in trying to spread this money around to serve equity-based purposes. So trying to help folks who might not ordinarily be able to afford some of these vehicles and try to make it more accessible. So these programs are only available to customers of Ashland Electric Utility because the funding all goes through the utility. And it's really, as I mentioned previously, it's a pretty important part of our big picture climate plan. How are we going to stop using as much fossil fuels and how can we help to electrify our transportation sector? So briefly, the electric vehicle incentive is focused on more affordable vehicles. This program features a price cap, which is a little bit different than programs we've had in the past. So we're looking only at vehicles $30,000 or less. And primarily, this could be used vehicles, it could be new vehicles if they're on the more affordable side. There are quite a few different deals available through the dealers now where you can actually buy a brand new EV for under $30,000 with all the different incentives that you can get through the dealership. I should point out that this is really the price you pay at the dealer that needs to be $30,000 or less. It does not include any rebates or incentives that you might collect after you leave the dealership. And that's just how we are able to track it with paperwork. The objective of this program is really to sell 70 EVs, get 70 new EVs registered in Ashland within a year. I think that's very achievable. Ashland has a higher than average uptake of electric vehicles for the state. I think it's about 4 times the state average in Ashland. I'm going to just buzz through briefly the bike criteria as well, and then I'm going to hop over and show you actually the web pages that describe the details of these programs. Because really, if you're going to engage with either of these programs, you want to read through all of the fine print. It's not a lot, but there are some eligibility criteria. The bike incentive is really focused on Class 1 bikes. This is a place to start. The grant money that we were able to obtain is funding this bike incentive 100%. So it's not a program that we could start with city funds, which is kind of a new idea. So we're able to fund this entirely through the grant. And as part of that, we had a couple of different things we were trying to do. One was to strengthen the relationship with local bike shops so that people who are engaging with this new technology actually have a local place they can go to get good information about it. We're also looking at Class 1 bikes as a place to start because they're the most intuitive to riders. You have to pedal in order to make the bike go. So it's not like an electric moped style bike that has a throttle and you don't need to pedal. All of the incentives that we're going to run through this program require you to purchase through an Ashland bike shop, a retail bike shop. And there are 4 currently participating here. And we're hoping to push 50 bikes through this program in the next year. See, there's a couple of questions on the chat, but I can't see it. So, Bridget, is there something you can read out to me?
Yeah, we just had a question, 2 questions about the electric vehicles. One, if the incentive is the same for businesses and individuals, and
Mhm.
also just clarification about the $30,000
Yeah,
price from the invoice from the dealer,
sure.
from Larry.
Yeah, so the deal with, um, sorry, tell me the first question again. It was, oh, for which type of accounts? So this is available to both commercial and residential accounts. Only one incentive per account is available. So if you're going to buy a fleet of vehicles for your business, you can only get one incentive. If you're going to buy multiple EVs for your home, you can only get one incentive. If you let somebody who lives in your home claim the incentive, that's okay too, as long as they reside there. But the checks are paid to whomever is the account holder at the utility. So that's an important detail to keep note of. Could you read, please, Bridget, the other question about clarifying the price cap?
Yeah, Larry's just wants to clarify that the $3,000 or the $30,000 is the net invoice from the dealer.
That's correct. Yeah, and we haven't processed enough of these to know exactly which paperwork to ask for from each dealer because it varies a little bit. But we essentially need to see an itemized list of any incentives that were received off of the manufacturer's suggested retail price. And that's usually a pretty common document that you sign at the dealer. Maybe this would be a good time for me to hop over and show you the actual program page. So if you go to the Ashland City website / EV incentive, it'll take you to this page. And I think there's some interesting information here about how we generated the program, but I'd like to just focus for a minute here on some of the eligibility criteria that are most relevant. So we're really looking at lower cost vehicles, as I mentioned. One of the interesting things, both new and used are eligible. So if you are able to buy a used EV from an Oregon dealer, then you can qualify for this program. We're definitely trying to shop these programs around to folks who may not normally have access to electric vehicles. So this includes not only our income limited residents, but anybody who may run a service organization or who helps vulnerable populations. We are interested in trying to use these funds to support those causes. The other bit here is that we've actually designed part of the program to encourage participation with the state. The state offers a variety of different rebates for electric vehicles, and we encourage everyone to take as many of these incentives as possible. The other thing with this rebate, you may notice it's fairly generous. It's $1,500. $500 of that is provided by the grant. The other $1,000 comes from the utility. And that's in part a recognition that when people buy electric vehicles, they are also buying more energy from the utility. So this is really, in some ways, an investment for the city, but also it's an investment in climate action. What we heard from some of the previous programs was that having a smaller incentive like $200 or $300 is good, but it doesn't necessarily help people change their behavior or make a different choice. So we're trying a more generous incentive this time around to see what degree of change it creates. So again, as I mentioned, only customers of Ashland Electric can apply for this. So if you're a Pacific Power customer, I'm sorry. Let's see here. So another, yes, please, somebody has a question.
Yeah, it's Larry.
Hi, Larry.
I'm just wondering, seems to me the $30,000 cap, it kind of hits right near where a lot of vehicles are priced that I've noticed in terms of new vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine, especially a nonprofit organization that's serving, needy people, whatever it might be, could probably go to a dealer and make a deal to sell it, to buy a vehicle, if it combined with the city program. Like if they went to a dealer and said, we've got this much in our budget to get a vehicle, and the city of Ashland is offering this, but it has to be under 30,000, and the dealership is is having a $32,000 item, that there might be a dealer who would say, okay, well, because you're good people, we'll give you give up the profit and
Yeah.
do that. But would that be allowed?
You know, the city doesn't really care. We just want to not fund vehicles that might be perceived as luxury vehicles. And so the 30,000 is somewhat arbitrary. But back when we wrote the grant, that seemed like kind of a sweet spot to mostly encourage the purchase of used EVs, but also to pick up some of the newest lower cost EVs. You can also find a lot of like last year's model EV that are priced now below this threshold. And that wasn't the case when I wrote this grant.
Right. Okay. And I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. It's really, the cost has come down significantly. There are a lot of incentives that the manufacturers are offering to the dealers to help keep things moving. So that's something that, you know, when you go to the dealer website, you can normally click on it and get a preview of all the different sort of discounts that they're offering, and it changes from month to month. So whatever they're doing last week is not going to be what they're doing this week. But I can tell you without naming brands or dealerships that there are locally available brand new vehicles for under $30,000.
Great.
Yeah. So let's see. The one thing, because we're encouraging the purchase of used vehicles, we have a requirement that you purchase through a state dealer. And this link here, if you're not sure whether your dealer is licensed or not, which if anything looks like a dealership, it's probably a dealership. But if you're purchasing from a used vendor, you know, far away in Portland or somewhere, you may want to check, make sure they're actually registered with the state, and you can do that through this link. You can contact us if you have any questions about how to do that. And it's essentially just a business search. Oh, I'm sorry, this is here, where the link to the dealers are. And then also, we're only allowing vehicles that are already eligible for the state rebate. This includes basically every major manufactured car. What is not included on this list is DIY conversions and things like that. So if you're buying a conventional vehicle, you don't need to really look at this, but we are limiting it to sort of, you know, conventionally manufactured electric vehicles. So let's see. New or used is okay. Also, there's this requirement. This program began on the 15th of November, and because it's an incentive rather than a rebate, the idea is to motivate behavior change at the point of sale. So it's not retroactive. If you purchased your car prior to November 15th, this program didn't really exist yet, so we're not able to be retroactive at this point. There's a variety of different documentation that we need. Basically, this is just to make sure that whomever bought the car is actually connected to Ashland Electric. So having the utility customer information is key. Also, it's worth noting that whoever is the primary account holder is going to get the check. So if you bought the car but you live with someone else who pays the utility bills, then we're going to send the check to them. But typically this is not an issue for people if they live together, because really we're rewarding the person who is the ratepayer, and that's the purpose of this program.
Hey, Stu?
Yes.
We have a question about what about renters in Ashland who might have the landlord pay their electric bill?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I said, the check is going to go to whomever is the primary account holder. So if they're the ones that pay the bills, then they're the ones who will be benefiting from the check. Now, it's easily possible that people could make an arrangement that, hey, I'm going to get this incentive. Usually in these cases, the tenant is actually paying the electric portion somehow. And because that portion of energy will go up after they buy an EV, they should certainly have a conversation with their landlord in any case. I think it can be very delicate to talk to landlords about this kind of thing, so I'm happy to have another conversation offline if that's something that you need help with. Let's see. So I think I'll leave this webpage again. This is the city website /EV incentive, and I'll have the URL up at the end of the slideshow. But I encourage anybody who's interested in taking advantage of this program to really read through this. There's no, huge brain puzzles on here, but there are a few things to make sure that we can tie you back to the electric utility and to make sure that you purchase an eligible vehicle. Okay, so let me switch over here. I'm going to show you the same thing for the electric bikes. This one is a little bit shorter. So if you go to the city website /EBike Incentive, up here you can see, hopefully, it'll take you to this page. And so again, we're trying to sort of make these newer technologies more affordable to ratepayers. So $300 is the incentive in this case. We also included a price cap for the e-bikes, a $3,000 price cap, which, above $3,000, you may be able to buy a more luxury bike, but you're probably not going to buy a bike that helps you get around better. So we made the decision to sort of limit access to luxury e-bikes, at least for this pilot program. Again, only available to Ashland Electric account customers. One incentive per account. This could be used for a commercial or residential account. So if you have a business that needs an e-bike, that's fine. And I, in fact, would love to know of any of you who end up participating in either of these programs, what your experience is with the purchase and through the whole program. So we're definitely looking for feedback. Again, let's see, November 15th was the start date. We made a decision with this program that we were going to be supporting our local economy more and creating more connections with bike shops if we really run the program through the bike shops. And so this is really a sales tool for the local bike shops to help move more Class 1 e-bikes and to get more people to try it out. We're fortunate that we have a couple of really passionate stores here in Ashland. They are very into e-bikes and see what they can offer our community. One of the features of this, because we're using local bike shops, is you have to have an incentive voucher. And this is something that you would receive from the bike shop when you purchase your bike. If you don't get one of these incentive vouchers or line one up ahead of your purchase, there's no way to claim this incentive. So each incentive that's issued will be able to trace back to a particular bike shop, to a particular customer. Again, the incentive check is issued to the primary utility customer. And that's the main thing. Here are the different bike shops that are currently enrolled in the program. And I guess with that, let me blast through the last couple of my slides here. And
We have a question. Why Class 3 bikes aren't included?
Sure. So Class 3 bikes are capable of going up to 28 miles per hour. That's not really necessary for safe, functional transportation. It's also has less of a health co-benefit because people don't pedal as much. Personally, I have nothing against Class 3 bikes, but as far as using these grant monies for making community improvements, we're really starting with a lower tier, starting with Class 1, because that's the most economical, most friendly, most approachable place to begin. So let's see. So I talked about this already. I mention this already. I guess that's it then. So we have a few minutes left, and I'd really like to hear whatever other questions you folks have. But more importantly, if you are really interested in this and we don't get to your questions in the next 5 minutes, please do email one or both of us, and also check out the web pages because there's a lot of background info on there. So with that, let me stop sharing my screen and we can see each other again. Hello, everyone. I guess maybe you've been seeing me the whole time. So are there any questions? If you have one, please raise your hand or unmute yourself or whatever you like. Brian.
I wonder, when you set out the incentives, was there ever any consideration in terms of a tiered layer of incentives where if people could demonstrate a really low income, they could get a bigger rebate. And I'm also, especially as it pertains to the bikes, thinking of people in apartments who may have their landlord pay the utility bill. That I think it's just going to be, it'd be nice to find a way to allow them to be included. And I think the discussion of going to the landlord and asking for that may not be that fruitful.
Yeah, well, with electric vehicles, at least for cars, if you're a renter, there's definitely a conversation that needs to happen with your landlord in any case, because you're probably going to want to install a charger. So that, depending on the house, may or may not require significant upgrades. So it's always worth having a conversation. And if the tenant is the utility ratepayer, then it's no problem. But if the landlord is the ratepayer, then you want to talk to them also, because an electric vehicle will, up your usage of electricity significantly, and it may affect your rental agreement if you have utilities included, for example. So I think it's really on a case-by-case basis. I don't know.
But I'm thinking maybe, say, for instance, college students who need to get around and they're trying to decide between a car and an electric bike, and they don't have hardly any, much money at all.
All college students are like that.
Right, but it'd be nice to get them on a bike and get them into a lifelong pattern of using an e-bike.
Yeah, so I mean, this pilot program is a place to start, right? I would like to see a continued program that's funded by the city or funded by the utility somehow, or funded by climate action budgeting processes. But, this is a place to start. If I can show that this EBike incentive is successful, then we have room to talk about what comes next. If it's not successful, then we do something else.
Also,
Judy, yeah.
would the check go to the landlord?
Yeah, so whoever is the ratepayer is going to get the check. And that's for all the programs. And that's how we know that whoever bought the thing is actually living with that person, or at least has some sort of connection. It's not totally bulletproof. People can abuse any system if they put their minds to it, but typically having this connection between whoever is the purchaser and who is the ratepayer, we can trace it back pretty well. And we certainly, with electric vehicles, as I mentioned, those represent an investment for the utility because we're helping with climate, we're helping with local air quality, but we're also investing in our customers, and that they're going to be needing to buy more kilowatt hours from us. So we want to make sure that if we're giving an incentive for an electric vehicle, that electric vehicle has a reasonable chance of staying in Ashland. Because if it goes away immediately, then the utility doesn't actually see a benefit from that. And Ashland doesn't see a local air quality improvement from that. So it's not perfect, but that's the current way we do it.
We have some questions in the chat.
Sure, yeah. See one question here. Is there a net price cap for e-bikes? Yes, it's $3,000. And all the bike shops know about the price cap. Again, if we have a city program later that we fund ourselves, we may change the price cap requirement. But because this is an equity grant that we're operating under, we're trying to mostly subsidize the more affordable end of the spectrum. See from Larry, is there an incentive for the charger? We have a commercial incentive for chargers at the moment. So if you have a commercial electric account for business or a multifamily housing unit or something, you can get a pretty sizable incentive for a charger. It starts at $1,000 and then goes up from there, but not for residential at this time. See a question from Casey. What was the total grant amount that was awarded for the incentives? It was a $50,000 grant. 15,000 of that is being funneled into the e-bike program, and the rest is to the EV program. What are the measures to determine the success of the incentive program? Well, spending all the money and having documented evidence that those vehicles are in Ashland, that's success. How are we promoting this to the community? We've put it out on the Facebook. We're networking with some local groups. It's a pretty new program, so it hasn't spread far and wide as of yet, but we're beginning the promotion. And also having the bike shops as partners really helps them to push the program. because as I said, it's really a sales tool for them to leverage. Okay, Tatiana says thank you very much. Thank you, Tatiana. And I guess, are there any other questions? Because I see that we are nearly out of time. Okay, yes, seeing none, please do email myself or Bridget if you have follow-up questions, and you can reach us through the webpage.
Okay.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone.